Amber Heard, a very performing narcissist. Amber Heard is famous in her own right, although many of you will know her through her marriage to the world-famous actor Johnny Depp. Both have come to additional prominence as a consequence of subsequent divorce and allegation and counter-allegation of abusive behaviour towards one another. Accordingly, Ms. Heard first goes under the Tudorscope. For the heart of understanding, this isn't a video about espousing the merits of Ms. Heard or otherwise. This is a video about narcissism, and the behaviour of Ms. Heard and Mr. Depp is analysed in that context. It is provided for the purposes of wider understanding and education and explaining what is happening. Don't make the error of bandying around allegations of sexism, racism, etc. The only ism that's relevant here is narcissism. Amber Laura Heard is an American actress and model. Born and raised in Texas, she made her film debut in a minor supporting role in sports drama Friday Night Lights, followed by a series of other small roles in television and film. Her first leading role was in the horror film All the Boys Love Mandy Lane in 2006. Heard's breakthrough came in 2008, with roles in the action flick Never Back Down and in the movie Pineapple Express, both of which were box office successes. The same year, she received the Breakthrough Award at the Young Hollywood Awards. Heard continued her career with roles in films such as The Informers, The Stepfather, Zombieland, and The Joneses. In 2011, she played the female lead opposite Johnny Depp in The Rum Diary. Neither were critically nor commercially successful. In 2017, Heard was also named a global spokesperson for the cosmetics giant L'Oréal Paris. In addition to her acting career, Heard engages in activism for causes such as LGBTQ rights and domestic and sexual violence awareness. She is an American Civil Liberties Union ambassador and has been named a human rights champion for the Stand Up for Human Rights campaign by the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights. So far, a successful actress and model who also engages in activism. Amber Heard met her future husband, Johnny Depp, on the set of the 2011 movie The Rum Diary. Johnny Depp was said to be enamoured with his on-screen love interest and courted her. He showered her with gifts and went so far as to buy her a horse and name a beach on his private isle, Amber's Cove, because he had noticed that it looked like the curvature of her hip when viewed on a map. Despite his infatuation with his new girlfriend, Johnny's inner circle of friends was less than impressed and warned him against marrying Amber. And this is potential objectivity and the ability to see red flags of problematic behaviour, or overprotective of a friend who is focused on his new romantic relationship rather than his friends. It was reported that Johnny fell out with his sister Christy, who had been a long-standing manager of his day-to-day affairs, over his relationship with Amber. Potential objectivity and ability to see red flags of problematic behaviour, or possibly an overprotective relative who is focused on his new romantic relationship rather than his relative and business advisor. Several associates advised him not to get married to his girlfriend. Potential objectivity and the ability to see red flags of problematic behaviour, or is this the overprotective behaviour in respect of an associate who is focused on his new romantic relationship rather than them? One friend advising against the continuance of a relationship may well be the result of jealousy towards the new arrival. More friends forming a similar view starts to create a pattern, but one must always be mindful of cross-pollution as the threatened friends bond together towards a common enemy. However, the reports of such early warning from numerous people in 3 distinct groups suggest that there are a number of prominent red flags at an early juncture, which were seen by people not entirely objective and removed, but certainly more removed than Depp from the relationship. It is common in narcissistic ensnarements for the primary victim not to notice certain behaviours or dismiss them or attribute them to something else, the effect of the obscuring emotional thinking, whereas less involved individuals notice and pay heed to the warnings. The number of individuals and groups here supports the proposition that early problems were apparent. Some of Depp's friends later claimed that he had cut himself off from those looking out for him. This may well be the response of jealous friends, but again, isolation caused by the narcissist, either directly or indirectly, to ensure that third-party influences do not threaten the control sought over the primary target, is a common manipulation in the narcissistic dynamic, especially a romantic one. Amber Heard and Johnny Depp got married on February the 3rd, 2015, in a private civil ceremony without a prenuptial agreement. A month later, Johnny was in Australia to shoot a movie and spoke with Amber about his intention to enter into a post-nuptial agreement, which caused her to fly into a rage. The action offends the sense of entitlement, seeks to pin accountability, and thereby threatens control, resulting in the ignition of fury, hence the response of heated rage. In his latest declaration, Johnny described the incident as follows. While I was in Australia filming a movie approximately 1 month after I married Ms. Heard, on a day where my then lawyer tried to discuss with Ms. Heard the need that she sign a post-nuptial agreement with me, she went berserk and began throwing bottles at me. The first bottle sailed past my head and missed, but then she threw a large glass vodka bottle. The bottle struck the marble countertop, where my hand was resting, and exploded. The projectile's impact shattered the bone in my finger and entirely severed the tip of my finger. I had to have 3 surgeries to reconstruct my finger and contracted MRSA 3 times. I feared that I would lose my finger, my arm, and my life. Destruction of property and physical injury, rudimentary manipulations following the ignition of fury. He further mentioned that Amber put out a cigarette on his right cheek after having injured his finger with a second bottle before he was taken to the hospital. Physical violence as a direct assertion of control. Depp returned to Australia a month later, on April 21st, 2015, to finish shooting his movie. In April 2015, Heard and Depp breached Australia's biosecurity laws when they failed to declare their 2 Yorkshire Terriers to the Australian Customs Service when they flew by private jet into Queensland, where he was working on Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Men Tell No Tales. Sense of entitlement, rejection of accountability. Heard pleaded guilty to falsifying quarantine documents, stating that she had made a mistake owing to sleep deprivation, blame shifting, lack of accountability. She was placed on a $1,000 1-month good behaviour bond for producing a false document. Heard and Depp also released a video in which they apologised for their behaviour and urged people to adhere to the biosecurity laws. Depp later revealed that the bungle around the customs paperwork was due to her having had a bitter falling out with a staffer she sacked just before the trip to Australia. Revision of history, contentious relationship with others. The criminal charges of illegally importing animals were also dismissed, and Heard avoided possible jail time of up to 10 years. She was instead placed on a 1-month good behaviour bond. In May 2016, Amber filed for divorce, stating irreconcilable differences. Only 15 months after they got married. Less than a week later, she filed a domestic violence restraining order against Johnny Depp, which was denied and only a temporary restraining order was granted. The relationship between the two had ended, and the commencement of divorce proceedings by Heard is a further act of manipulation, a direct assertion of control over Depp. Most divorces occur, not all, because a narcissist is involved. That's why the relationship ends, and also is why most divorces are contentious and problematic. Please see the video, Why is Divorce So Hard? Seeking a restraining order is also an act of manipulation through the direct assertion of control. Allegations of domestic violence. In the court documents filed as part of the divorce, Amber stated the following. During the entirety of our relationship, Johnny has been verbally and physically abusive to me. Such an allegation may indeed be founded on evidence. However, where a narcissist is involved, such an allegation is either 1. A fallacy and projection where the narcissist uses the believed violence to assert control over the alleged incorrect perpetrator and garner control over third parties through seeking support and sympathy, or 2. Founded on being the recipient of verbal and or physical abuse, when the victim has fought back because of the narcissist's abuse of them. The narcissist then uses the fight back as a basis for deflection from their own behaviour, to blame shift to the victim and pity play to others with regard to the apparent, unprovoked verbal and or physical violence that has been suffered. Whether Heard is the true victim or playing the victim stands to be assessed further. Furthermore, I endured excessive emotional, verbal and physical abuse from Johnny, which has included angry, hostile, humiliating and threatening assaults to me whenever I questioned his authority or disagreed with him. The points I've just made are valid again. These statements soon spread around the world, accompanied with an image of Amber's bruised face that was published as evidence of the physical abuse that she endured. Depp denied the allegations, stating that his ex-wife was attempting to secure a premature financial resolution by way of her abuse allegations. If this is correct, it is a common manipulation by a narcissist to make such allegations in order to assert control. 1. Over the true victim. 2. To deflect accountability. 3. To garner support and sympathy from third parties. 4. To preserve the facade. And 5. Maximise the financial aspect. It is also worth pointing out that asserting an individual is doing this to secure a premature financial resolution may be the attempt to assert control. 1. Over a victim. 2. Deflect from accountability. 3. Preserve the support. 4. Garner support and sympathy from the third parties. And 5. Preserve the threatened financial position as best as possible. Which way it is to be interpreted, against her, against him, or against both, then more evidence must be considered. He also said that when Amber showed herself to the world on the 24th of May 2016 with what looked to be a bruised face, she had merely painted it on. As proof, he submitted elevator footage from their home on that same day, showing Amber's injury-free face. She was chatting with friends in the elevator of the Eastern Columbia building in downtown Los Angeles, where Johnny formerly owned a floor with 5 penthouses that was his and Amber's home, seemingly in a carefree and cheerful mood. Such evidence tends to suggest that the allegations of abuse were at best mistaken and at worst manufactured. The manufacturing of such an allegation with accompanying manufactured behaviour, painting on the supposed injury, demonstrates an act of manipulation designed to assert control directly over the victim. Late in August 2016, Amber and Johnny reached a $7 million divorce settlement, and 5 months later, on January the 13th in 2017, the divorce was finalised. Abused? Me too. In the wake of the allegations made against Harvey Weinstein and the subsequent rise of the #MeToo movement, Amber made several public appearances and held passionate speeches about speaking out and how she will not be silenced, about the abuse she had to suffer at the hands of Johnny. She also wrote an article in the Washington Post referring to herself as a public figure representing domestic abuse, and complained about the backlash she had received for speaking out. For months, I rarely left my apartment, she explained. When I did, I was pursued by camera drones and photographers on foot, on motorcycles and in cars. Tabloid outlets had posted pictures of me and spun them in a negative light. I felt as though I was on trial in the court of public opinion. This backlash is perceived as a threat to control, and therefore the narcissist must assert control over a variety of tertiary sources, strangers and acquaintances in the fuel matrix, with the comments which is a pity play and a facade management. She further desired to rally fellow females behind her, stating, "I want to ensure that women who come forward to talk about violence receive more support. We can work together to demand changes to laws and rules and social norms, to fight the imbalances that have shaped our lives." Facade management. These lines, along with the statement that she considers herself a public figure representing domestic abuse, could be interpreted as the passionate rallying calls of a woman who stands up for what's right at the cost of her own privacy, her selfless sacrifice making her the Joan of Arc of the Me Too movement. Facade management, pity play, or sympathy symphony, given the scale of the address. It's worth noting, therefore, that in August 2016, she retracted her request for a restraining order and dismissed the domestic violence case against Johnny with prejudice, meaning she cannot refile it. This happened only shortly before Johnny agreed to the previously mentioned $7 million settlement later that same month. Why would she speak so passionately about her horrible experiences with domestic violence to the media, but not follow through with her own case against Depp? The reason being that having secured control, from her perspective, through such a significant financial settlement over Depp, she then had no further need to assert that control, and thus retracts the domestic violence case. That in itself doesn't mean that the withdrawal doesn't mean that the domestic violence didn't happen. It demonstrates the hypocrisy of the narcissist by issuing a rallying cry, the Me Too activity which bolsters the facade and asserts control over secondary and tertiary sources in the fuel matrix, but doesn't match with the personal actions because the need no longer exists. This evidences hypocrisy and compartmentalization. The narcissist will say one thing and do the other, so long as this maintains control, and the narcissism prevents the narcissist from seeing this hypocrisy. Furthermore, given the evidence presented, it is highly likely that the allegations of domestic violence may have been fabricated or, most likely of all, arose from incidences of fighting back, and were seized on to deflect and blame shift, and were also exaggerated upon. Temper tantrums. Heard had spoken in detail about the abuse she had suffered and cried many tears during her interviews regarding this topic. She received considerable media support, which would amount to the provision of fuel and facade maintenance. When one takes a closer look into the court documents regarding this case, a situation presents itself that, based on the evidence provided within them, is quite different from how Heard chose to portray the situation to the media. Heard claimed that Depp showed up late to her birthday party on the 21st of April 2016 and that he was inebriated and high. All the other guests had left the party. Amber claimed the following: Johnny and I had a discussion about his absence from my birthday celebration, which deteriorated into a bad argument that started with Johnny throwing a magnum-sized bottle of champagne at the wall and a wine glass on me and the floor, both of which shattered. Amber went on to explain Johnny grabbed her by the shoulders and pushed her onto the bed, blocking the bedroom door, then grabbing her by her hair and pushing her violently onto the floor. After yelling at her for several minutes, he stormed out of the condo, tossing aside and breaking nearly everything in his path. Such behaviour again paints Depp as an abusive individual. However, in light of the points made earlier with regard to a pattern of behaviour, evidence which contradicts Heard and further evidence that I shall address, which contradicts her behaviour is viewed through the prism of not victim, but abuser and that of the narcissist. Thus her allegations amount to manipulations, as either lies, twisting of the truth, blame shifting and deflection. Depp stated in his testimony that Amber was the one to erupt because he'd shown up late to her birthday party, and that she'd punched him in the face 2 times while screaming insults at him. The late arrival wounds the narcissist, resulting in a threat to control. This causes an ignition of fury, resulted in heated fury through verbal violence and physical violence. Amber was the one who had been drinking, and when she became aggressive, Depp defended himself by grabbing Amber's arms to prevent her from punching him again, telling her to stop. He then pushed her away from him onto the bed and told her he was leaving and that she should not follow him. He left the apartment building and returned the next day to find that Amber had defecated in their bed as a prank and then had gone off to Coachella with her friends. Depp provided the court with photographic evidence, and Amber didn't deny that there had been feces in the bed, but claimed that it was from her Yorkshire Terrier. The housekeeper that had to clean up the poop that morning later stated in her testimony that the poop was too big to be from their dog. This photographic evidence is independent evidence and supported by witness testimony which contradicts Heard's version of events. Once again, Depp's retreat from the scene amounts to wounding, and therefore Heard must assert control over him. She can't do it directly, as he has absented from her presence. She does so by defecating in the bed, and gains thought fuel from imagining his response to the act, and therefore feels that she has control, albeit indirectly, over Depp. Some narcissists would pursue the retreating victim in an attempt to assert control directly by badgering them, or ring and text the victim, or turn to third parties to complain about the behaviour of the victim in order to seek to assert control. In this instance, Heard did so by defecating in the bed as an act of provocation in another's arms. Speaking of another instance when Depp had apparently physically assaulted her, Heard claimed that he was yet again drunk and high and suddenly became jealous, claiming that Amber had had an affair with her then co-star James Franco. Provocation, deflection. Since then, footage of the apartment building's elevator has been made public, showing that Heard had Franco over one night. Heard could be seen entering the elevator on May 22, 2016, about an hour before midnight, to go to the garage level. Moments later, she re-entered the elevator with a man now confirmed to be James Franco. He covered his face with the hood of his sweater, whilst Heard kept her head low to disguise her face from where she knew the elevator camera to be. Franco rested his head on Heard as the elevator took them up, and Heard also leant against him. They left the elevator together on the level where Depp owns all 5 of the apartments. Given the secretive demeanour of both parties, the late hour at which Franco arrived, and the fact that Depp was out of town when Heard invited Franco over, this supports the proposition that Heard was engaging in extramarital activity with Franco. Devaluation of Depp as the intimate partner primary source, infidelity, seduction of intimate partner secondary source. The receptionist also testified to having seen Elon Musk visit Amber several times as well, always when Depp was out of town. Further act of devaluation. Acts of violence. Heard wanted Depp to be investigated as to whether he had ever been violent with one of his past partners. It is invariably the case that an abuser is a narcissist, and therefore a pattern of abusive, violent behaviour occurs with previous partners because of the way that the narcissist's ingrained defence mechanisms operate. Both Depp's ex-wife as well as his daughter have publicly spoken out on behalf of him and defended him, confirming that they had never witnessed Depp engaging in violent behaviour. It is, however, noteworthy that Heard would make such a specific request given her own personal history. Heard had been arrested in 2009 for physical violence against her then-girlfriend Tassia Van Ree. Amber later accused the female cop responsible for her case of misogyny and homophobia. The cop has spoken about this, noting that she is a lesbian and an LGBTQ activist herself. Compartmentalization, hypocrisy, ignited fury, physical violence, blame-shifting, deflection, lack of accountability. Sexual identity. Heard publicly came out at GLAAD's 25th anniversary event in 2010, but has stated, "I don't label myself one way or another. I have had successful relationships with men and now a woman. I love who I love. It's the person that matters." Of her decision to come out, she said, "I think when I became aware of my role in the media, I had to ask myself an important question. Am I part of the problem? And I think that when millions and millions of hard-working, tax-paying Americans are denied their rights and denied their equality, you have to ask yourself, what are the factors that are an epidemic problem? And that's what this is." Heard was in a relationship with photographer Tassia Van Ree from 2008 to 2012. Narcissism manifests in heterosexual, homosexual and bisexual individuals. Evidence of sexual fluidity does not, in itself, mean an individual is a narcissist. Sexual fluidity is, however, more prevalent in narcissists, owing to a lack of true self and the chameleon ability that narcissists have to present whatever form enables the assertion of control and the gathering of fuel. See the video. The narcissist is a sex chameleon. The narcissist will be whatever he or she needs to be to ensure control is obtained and maintained, since control and fuel are central to the needs of the narcissist. Be careful what you wish for. Heard sought to obtain Depp's medical records, including any evidence of drug use or drug treatment. Depp has spoken about his dependency on painkillers and struggles to get off them, and had admitted his medical records. Dr. David Kipper is a specialist in drug and addiction treatments who played an integral role as Heard had hoped to get Dr. Kipper to testify on her behalf about Depp's drug use. Smearing. This attempt backfired, as Dr. Kipper has since testified against Heard, having witnessed her abusive behaviour towards Depp on multiple occasions. When Depp's side submitted the medical records required of him, they stated the following. And included in the records that will be produced today, if they haven't been already, are the records of Dr. Kipper. Dr. Kipper is also a fact witness. We expect him to testify that he personally witnessed violence between the couple, but the violence was initiated by Ms. Heard, and Mr. Depp did not even respond physically to that violence. He will testify that as a fact witness, so this is a case of be careful what you wish for. Physical violence, ignition of fury, hypocrisy, compartmentalization, absence of future planning. It was claimed by several media outlets that the trial was postponed by 6 months and is therefore to be held on the 3rd of August instead of the 3rd of February because Johnny failed to meet the deadline to submit them. This is incorrect and may well be an attempt which has failed by Heard and her advisors to manipulate public opinion and attack Depp, smearing and facade management. Having failed to submit her own medical records thus far, sense of entitlement. Furthermore, the postponing had nothing to do with the submission of medical records at all. Judge Bruce D. White, who resides over the case, noted that not only did Depp provide his medical records on time, but this was also not the reason the court granted the continuance to begin with. Judge White stated, "It was granted at the request of both parties because of what were reported to me to be difficulties taking depositions of people taken in California. So I can only suspect that it is someone on the defence's side that made the press release." Amber has spoken passionately about how she was a victim of domestic abuse and how she will not be silenced, but will speak up about the abuse she had to endure. She has also encouraged other victims to use their voices, which is interesting given that she is now on her 3rd attempt to try and dismiss Johnny's defamation case against her. She also filed a motion for protective order, attempting to prevent any evidence against her from becoming available to the public. This motion was dismissed. Heard has now hired Harvey Weinstein's abuse-specializing lawyer Roberta Kaplan to defend her. She's also hired Paul Baresi, a former porn star turned private detective, in hopes of digging up any insinuations about Depp that could be used against him. Baresi takes great pride in his abilities, as he has recently been on a podcast stating the following. In the life of a celebrity, or anyone else for that matter, if you want to hurt someone, character assassination is the way to go. And the irony is, it isn't necessarily that whatever is said to be true. The damage can be done in the mere telling of it. Character assassination, facade management, control through the court process, deflection. Death threats and innuendo. In October 2015, on the US show Overhauling, Depp tricked Heard with the help of her father into believing her car had been sold in parts and pieces by a man named David Kalaki. A police officer reported the situation to Heard, claiming that her father had punched Kalaki for selling Heard's car, to which Amber responded, "And my dad hit him only once? I don't blame him. I'll fucking kill him." She proceeded to flip off the man in question, who had been standing at a distance. Depp then told her about the prank and surprised her with a redesigned and now glossy cherry red Mustang. While Mr. Kalaki didn't actually sell Heard's car, indeed he was Depp's mechanic and recounted the events of the show and what followed after in his sworn declaration. After the show, Mr. Kalaki went to the Eastern Columbia building in which Depp owned 5 penthouses, in which he, Amber, and by then also several of Heard's friends lived rent-free. Sense of entitlement, grandiosity. Heard had asked him to instruct her on how the newly installed touchscreen in her Mustang worked and how to interface her iPhone with the onboard system. He arrived at the appointed time, but Heard wasn't available. It took 3 hours before she came down from the penthouse to the parking garage. Sense of entitlement, lack of accountability. Mr. Kalaki then stated the following. After she came down, we found the Mustang. She got in the driver's seat and I the front passenger seat. She seemed to be in a very happy mood. We spent a moment exchanging greetings. She then said something weird. Ooh, here we are alone together in a parked car in a dark parking garage. We could do anything in here and nobody would see us. Manipulation through flirtation, promise gain, boundary violation. He did not reply directly to her observation, nor did he make eye contact, but only responded with, "Okay, let me show you how the sound system works." He then showed her the touchscreen display connected to her phone and noticed that her phone was already connected to one contact, Dr. David Kipper. Kalaki was also Dr. Kipper's mechanic and asked her, "Oh, do you know Dr. Kipper too?" He then stated, Amber's response was completely unexpected. She turned to me shockingly icily and said, "How the fuck do you know David Kipper?" I quickly apologised for asking, said it was none of my business, and told her Dr. Kipper was a client of mine. The tension in the air was extreme at that point. While she gave me the silent treatment, Then she quickly exited the car while saying, "It's none of your fucking business." She walked to the penthouse elevator, and I never saw her again. Note the shift from flirtation to aggression, black and white thinking, response to threat to control, provocation, verbal aggression, silent treatment. Mr. Kalaki continued to work on Depp's cars and Heard's Mustang as well, but after Depp split from Heard, he told Mr. Kalaki to separate the billing from Heard's car in approximately June 2016. Heard's first reaction after receiving this information was to abuse verbally Mr. Kalaki over the phone using expletives, threats, and a continued rant over what she claimed was an unfortunate financial downturn of her personal finances caused by Depp, threat to control, sense of entitlement, victim mentality, verbal aggression, threat. She said to Mr. Kalaki, "You motherfucker, you're screwing me," claimed that there was a legal agreement between her and Depp that he would pay for her bills, but failed to provide said agreement, likely because it doesn't actually exist. Lie, sense of entitlement, verbal aggression, the need to assert control. She then went on to abuse Kalaki using words such as fucker, asshole, motherfucker, and said he was a dishonourable piece of shit, stating that Depp will not pay my rent, he will not pay my bills, fuck him and fuck you. Verbal aggression. A mother's love. Heard had claimed that one of the first people she confided in when Depp allegedly started physically abusing her was her mother, since she was someone who was familiar with these kinds of scenarios and would understand. However, Heard's mother is no stranger to her daughter's wrath herself. After having a short, friendly interaction with a reporter on the red carpet at the 2015 Toronto International Film Festival, Heard was caught on tape rushing towards her mother in anger and hissing at her to never make eye contact. "You embarrass me." Whilst her mother obediently motioned to walk ahead of her, making Amber away through the crowd, Amber's comment could be interpreted as concern for her less press-experienced mother. However, Heard's angry hand motions and baleful glare, along with the verbal put-down in public, demonstrate an alternative driver of her behaviour. Lack of emotional empathy, ignited fury, provocation, assertion of control, verbal insult, grandiosity. Neither David nor Paige Heard ever disputed anything Depp stated with regards to not having been abusive to Amber and her having violently assaulted him. The information provided is only part of a massive information which exists. However, from this information, one sees evidence through a pattern of repeated behaviour of the telling of lies, the need to assert control, exhibiting the response to a perceived threat to that control, facade management, the operation of a fuel matrix, physical violence, the ignition of fury, damage to property, infidelity, provocation, smearing, lack of accountability, lack of future planning, compartmentalization, sense of entitlement, grandiosity, flirtation, boundary violation, promised gain, silent treatment, black and white thinking, verbal aggression, threat, the operation of a coterie, lack of emotional empathy. Based upon this information, it is evident that Amber Heard is indeed a very performing narcissist. If you want to understand more about the dynamic between Amber Heard and Johnny Depp, click on the link in the video description to obtain a detailed analysis of a telephone call between Depp and Heard, which will shed further light on her behaviour and the confirmation that she is a very performing narcissist. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.